Hi, thank you very much for joining us. I hope I'm sitting in the right seat. We'll find out soon enough if I'm not. Today's panel is going to be a discussion by people who know more about this stuff than I do about the emerging trends in animation in China. Okay, it looks like everybody is ready. The first thing I would like to ask, and this is open to anyone that feels they want to chime in, what we've seen a lot, at least in Hollywood in the last 6-7 years, is a consistent sort of a push-pull between creating big-scale, franchise-friendly content that appeals to both Hollywood and the rest of the world with an eye on China. And I'm wondering, since China has also been trying to have a go of that, what is the push-pull for people that make animated content, animated films, animated television in China in terms of making specifically culturally significant content that also appeals overseas as well? Is there less of a need to play outside of China because that market is so large versus, what you would consider the modern U.S. blockbuster, where that's only arguably a small portion of the overall box office?
What I'm discovering as I work in this arena is that there are different types of storytelling, and in China, I watch their films, and it's a very different approach to filmmaking as far as storytelling is concerned. And I think there is a curiosity in China for Western storytelling, and so I think it's a back and forth. And I've seen, I think, some of China's storytelling spilling over, especially into our action films here. So I'm hoping that our storytelling can start spilling over into China as far as how we tell these animated stories, and and what that brings. Because I know they do like a lot of what we do here, but they also have their own stories that are, there's a richness of stories over there that it would be great to get our teeth sunk into to give it a try and see what they think.
What artistic choices do you make when crafting something that's technically targeted at the Chinese audience that would be different from a conventional, stereotypical Hollywood production?
Well, I've just finished an animated film in China that was created for the world. So we didn't set out to do a film that was specifically Chinese, although the film I did, which was originally supposed to take place in Canada, easily flipped to China. So from a visual standpoint, we set it in China. I can give you several examples in the film of things that we had an art department that was in Los Angeles. We also had some artists in China. So just a very simple example of something that they didn't understand. We needed a bowl. And they created a nice, Christian Cellawald was our production designer, and he created this nice, beautiful, round bowl. And we said, well, bowls in China have pedestals on them. You need to add a pedestal. And so we need to be sure that we're being authentic as well. And so our Chinese artists were very helpful in making sure that we had the authenticity as well as the creativity.
Okay. The next thing I would like to discuss is, because there's been a lot of discussion in the last 6-7 years again about Chinese film trying to sort of follow in the footsteps of what Hollywood has done, because there's such a large appetite, whether intentional, nurtured or natured, for Hollywood-type blockbusters. What lessons are you taking in terms of what to do and what not to do in terms of trying to create what arguably you can call a newfound Chinese, a boom in animation of China, so to speak? So what, are there cautionary tales or different choices in terms of production or distribution? I guess what have you taken from over here, good and bad, and applied it to over in China?
Well, I can give a couple examples. When I first went to the studio in China, I asked what your favorite animated film is. Didn't matter. I didn't care where it came from the world. I don't know if anybody wants to guess, but what do you think their favorite animated film is? Okay? Nope. 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 Frozen today. I think when I went there, it wouldn't have been Frozen. Today it would be Frozen. It was actually Crudes. And why was it Crudes? Because it was about family. And it was a father who sacrificed himself for his family. And that's very important in Chinese tradition because China is very much about their family. And thus, that was their favorite film. There are films you cannot do in China, and there are films you can do. And I'm sure, Brenda, you can talk about some of the things that you found out that you cannot do.
I haven't discovered that yet.
I'll give you an example. And I saw a list somewhere, so it's kind of public, but you shouldn't do ghost stories. In China, I don't believe in ghosts, and so we don't do ghost stories. I did a movie at DreamWorks that was called Ants, and Ants was one ant who stood out from the others. That's a story that doesn't resonate in China because China is all about the whole and not one individual.
And is that, if I might follow up on that, that's actually interesting. So how, I guess, do you balance the, for lack of a better word, the push-pull between individuality and, being part of one whole culture, especially when, for example, so many, Western films do, the one person above all that can strive and save the day versus, no, we win as a community.
I think that's more on how you use that individual who does rise above it all and what their motives are. If it's about, I'm discovering that if it's about what they're rising above is benefiting the all, then it works. But yeah, I can see where if it's just about, an individual that it wouldn't play very well.
So Brenda, for instance, Despicable Me 3 was incredibly popular in China, as we know. And that film, the storyline does rise above the individual. Would you say that's a good example?
Yeah, I'd say that would be, because it's about family and it's about keeping it all together. So it's community, that's what it's based on, I think. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to really know what he thinks.
这个中国人呢，一般是善于倾听，也不善于表达，在我身上体现的尤为更是哈。这个刚才几位前辈讲的，我都非常赞同。说到国产动漫电影，还有美国动漫电影进入中国市场，应该说按2016年度的数据哈，进入主流院线的动画电影共62部，票房共70亿，其中进口动漫呢是23部。 票房46亿，然后票房前10的动漫电影中，第一名是《疯狂动物城》，有15.3亿，这我说的都是人民币啊。另外呢有5个，还有4个也是美国的，还有一个是荷兰和美国合拍的。从这个角度讲啊，在中国的观众还是很喜欢，仍然很喜欢美国的动画片啊，这是一个。 其实说到这个在中国观众，或者我们中国的一个动漫的从业者，做什么样的产品更让公众喜欢，或者是能走入国际市场，这一点呢，我想呢，走入国际市场应该还走得很短，但中国市场本身已经很大了，有几个数据哈，讲就是在中国市场，它 有几个因素，一个是不断推进的城镇化进程啊，带来更多的文化消费。中国目前是13.75亿人口，预计到2020年呢，城镇化率将达到60%，当下可能55%左右哈，这个数字非常可观的。第二呢，互联网的普及啊，为了动漫带来新市场、新消费。以前中国总是走传统媒体、电视渠道，这个当下这个以 BAT 为代表的互联网企业啊。 走得非常快，网民扩展迅速。如果说那个2016年网民数量是超过7亿，预计啊2020年呢将超过10亿人。这个 互联网的这个加的深入啊，会促使包括动漫在内数字内容和消费空间呢急剧扩展。一个数据哈，就是2012年到2016年期间呢，动漫产值从呢760亿增加到1320亿，年复合增长率是15%。2017年上半年就达到786亿，预计的全年增长率应该是不低于20%。这是一个中国动画的一个市场，动漫的市场情况。如果说当下的中国有哪些创作主题啊，更让就是我们观众喜欢，或者是我们动漫的一个投资人啊、创作者啊，更愿意探讨的话题，有这么几块儿。一个是中国优秀传统文化为主题的动漫内容啊，成为创作者的优先选择。一部好的作品应该包括思想性、艺术性，以及科技啊，以及娱乐性。从东方5000年文明的历史中啊，从中这些汲取优秀的传统文化，然后思想艺术上、艺术性上啊，都会有充分的理由。去年中国本土有一个作品取自《山海经》的故事《大鱼海棠》，成功上映，这就是一个例证。我在工作中和周围同仁们交流哈，也发现一些中国的历史人物，正在成为创作选题一个热潮，比如王阳明、老子，还有郑成功等。第二个呢，就是这个现象是动漫作品中从一个单纯引进，向中外合作方式转化。去年的国产一个电影叫《功夫熊猫》，这是中美合资企业在中国拍摄，在中国制作，应该我们把它归属于国产电影了。这个票房10亿，大获成功。应该近年来的国内的动漫企业以资本为纽带，通过积极进行版权内容收购、投资合拍、设立海外的分公司等方式，加强与海外公司合作。举个例子讲，光线传媒投资了5.7亿日元，和日本的通药公司成立合资公司。阿里巴巴和迪士尼公司呢，宣布推出迪士尼的世界，为阿里巴巴用户提供数字娱乐体验。另外呢，就是近期啊，我们习近平总书记见证签约的一个中国和捷克斯洛伐克合拍动画片叫《熊猫与小鼹鼠》啊，已经制作完成。这是我向各位介绍一下中国的一个市场情况啊，谢谢。
Thank you. That actually took up a couple of these questions. And this is, again, open for anyone. What are the challenges in the future, in the near future or down the line in terms of, expanding the market? Because I know that a lot of the reason that we look to China as sort of is because the market is expanding so quickly, building more theaters, having new audiences that weren't necessarily into theatrical movie going a generation or two ago. So what are the challenges for you in terms of broadening the demographics in China for what's technically a kid-targeted medium?
Typically,
Sorry. What was
in
that?
China, it's not a kid-targeted medium. I think we all know, I hope everybody knows this. Our key audience in China is 18 to 25 years old. It's not a kid's audience. So it is the young date crowd that come to see animated movies. And so we need to think of the audience as a little bit more sophisticated maybe when you talk about making animated films for kids. I know for Brenda and for myself, and I think I'm speaking for you, we make films that we want to see. We don't make films for little children. We want the kids to come see them, but we make something that we really want to see. So I think in the way we approach our filmmaking, we look to hit everybody we can, as broad quadrants, 4-quadrant movies as possible.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's, to me, it's just I've got more to play with. When I think about going to bigger audiences, because I love to tell stories that resonate and have heart and humor, but that speaks to everyone and not just talking down to little kids. So So I think it's a wonderful thing.
Oh, absolutely.
布兰达曾经到我们集团访问过，和我们中国的同行做过交流，这个也是在美中影视博览会的推动下成型的。那个我很荣幸地告诉布兰达，在中国市场啊，应该不是18到20岁的孩子了。据那个互联网新媒体一个播放平台爱奇艺的一个数据统计啊，这个在20到25岁期间的孩子25这个期间的这个收视比率呢，已经达到34%。2016年的数据统计，25到35期间的孩子人的受众群体呢，已经达到22%。这个群体挺有意思。中国改革开放啊，从那个1980年开始，80年前后开始吧，这个物质啊、经济啊，逐渐的这个快速发展。我个人印象啊，85年开始啊，中国人逐渐开始吃饱肚子了，这个而且也有能力去消费看动画片儿，所以我们的80后、90后啊，都是看动画片儿长大的，他们对这个动画形象啊，深以为许，非常喜欢。这些孩子现在已经到了30到35岁，可以这样说，这个应该说我们的创作思路啊，应该可以往高龄这个层次的人发展进军。谢谢。
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yes. No, and what I've noticed is that you get a lot of chit chat in the American media about how, Hollywood blockbusters have to be tailored very, simplistic stories, lots of explosions, not a lot of dialogue to tailor to the overseas market. But then you see the films that do well overseas, films like Zootopia, which is basically a race parable. It's very dialogue driven. A lot of the Marvel films are very dialogue driven. So I do think there is a certain, for lack of a better word, conventional wisdom, as you said, that you don't need to dumb this down for overseas audiences. And if anything, what I've found in terms of the films, and again, I'm coming at this from an American film nerd that looks at American movies, the films that are smart do well everywhere. And as you mentioned, and actually you all mentioned about the demographics, are then you able to take those numbers and create somewhat more challenging animated features beyond the conventional PG-rated action comedy template?
I think that's coming. I think that animation, especially in the independent marketplace, which is where I find myself now. I grew up in the big studio marketplace, but in the independent marketplace, I think our opportunity to do much more sophisticated animated films is coming. And you're going to start seeing some movies that don't quite hit the template of just being a comedy and making us laugh. So I have high hopes for the independent market. I have high hopes for the Chinese independent market. The films should be becoming more diverse and better stories, and not just comedies and not just romances.
Yeah, I agree. And I also find it interesting, just on the flip side of it, I recently just watched a few of the films for the Expo, and there was one that won the award last night. It's not what I was expecting, or not what I expected. And what I found interesting about it, you don't see it as much here, is that it starts out, you think it's going to be this really wacky kind of comedy, but then it has so much heart in it that it can become serious. And the tonality of it was all over the place, but in a really good and balanced way, where American filmmakers have a tendency, okay, no, you're not living up to just being a comedy, or this is, even a dramedy doesn't, it went beyond that. And so I think there are a lot of things we can learn as storytellers from, just sort of letting go a little bit of our old norms. And so I think that will help our films as well.
No, I have, my limited exposure, I have noticed one of the things that stands out about that is, the tones that bounce up and down. Something, a Stephen Chow picture, or something like Monster Hunt, which is, 1 minute it's a very family friendly, adventure fantasy, but then it gets very serious very quickly. And then it goes back to, even something like Wolf Warrior, as grim and violent as that picture is, there are jokes. So are you, I lost my train of thought, I apologize.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that.
What do you do better in terms of creating animated content in China? What is the push-pull between theatrical content and television content and online content? Because right now, at least in our point of view, we are seeing very much of, is this a movie? Is this a TV show? Is this an online miniseries? Is this a digital short? Aside from the fact that, animation is not a genre, it's a tool to tell all different kinds of stories for all different kinds of audiences. What is the push? Has there been any, conversations that you've had about this belongs in movies, this belongs in TV, this belongs in streaming?
We always do when we look at the projects. We look at the types of stories that are told and how they're going to be told. BBC and Netflix is undergoing, they're doing Watership Down. I understand it's about 400 minutes, going to be done as a multi-series. I think that's one of the biggest projects I'm aware of. Jennifer, you would know better than I do. That's going into television long form.
Well, I also know of some projects coming out of Disney and Disney's partnership with various filmmakers within China. There's one particular series, don't know the Chinese for it, but it's commonly referred to in the West as Stone Lions, and that came out of that incubator program. And I believe it was always seen as a television property. I don't think there was any discussion of, is this a feature project, what is this for? There was that development and that intention from the beginning to try to bring something to the small screen that would reach a wide audience inside China. It's done very, very well. I think they might be the #1 kids show on CCTV right now.
And I don't
So,
think the
projects like
criteria
that.
for live action and animation is different. I think the same way as we look at live action projects to determine if there's enough story to take it long form is similar. Or is it a short form? Is it something you want to tell in short increments? I'm a big fan of shorts. I love telling 5-10 minute very important pieces. I worked on The Last Days of Ivory to talk about the ivory trade. It made sense to do it in short form, and that's what we set out to do.
What experiences have you had of late in terms of attempting to develop specific, or IP, new franchises, new monetizable characters for the Chinese marketplace? As opposed to...
Well, with Original Force, we set out to tell good stories. It's about the story. It's not about creating a franchise. I've created a tremendous amount of franchises in my career. I've never worked on the sequels, not once. I'm interested in coming up with the original IP, the original idea, having really great characters. For me, it's about characters that you can identify with, that you can become emotionally involved with. And we don't have a criteria for IP at Original Force at this point in time. And it's expensive to go out and buy IP, and the major studios have those big pocketbooks, and I've lost a lot of IP in my career to bigger studios who had a lot more money to write for it. I wanted to work with the Schultz family. I think I met with them 15, 20 years ago before it went to Fox, and couldn't do that, and realized that creating your own IP, for me, that's the most satisfying thing you do, which is trying to take, we start with a white piece of paper. There's absolutely nothing there, and we have to create everything from every sound, every piece of music, every emotion, every character, a shoelace, a nose. Every detail has to be created in animation, and I love that part of the craft that we do.
And while there definitely are animated franchises within China, I'm thinking specifically of like Boonie Bears, those sorts of properties. Pardon?
Monkey King.
Oh, Monkey King, yes, Monkey King. Definitely ahead of Boonie Bears. At least from what we've seen from a more external view, is people aren't necessarily diving in thinking we need to build a franchise. Right now, people are still working on developing their storytelling tools, finding what resonates. A lot of studios are attempting pipelines that they haven't undertaken before, and I believe there are a lot more challenges before people start going into that franchise mentality necessarily.
I agree. I'm with Sandy. I'm with you. It's more about creating something that is going to touch an audience with the story and the characters, and then from there, it's like, okay, if you want to take this and run with it with sequels and a franchise and all of that stuff, great. But that's not my. That's what I find most of the filmmakers aren't. They're not looking for that initially.
Is there less pressure to create franchise-friendly content than there would be in a stereotypical Hollywood environment?
Well, working sort of independently of a big studio system, yes, it's a lot less pressure. The pressure is more just making this one thing relatable and hopefully successful in the marketplace. But it's the franchise for me is someone else's heartache and problem, and I just get to do the fun part of making the film. So,
what challenges have you faced of late in terms of adhering to, I guess, for lack of a better word, governmental regulations in terms of the do's and don'ts, I guess, in terms of the product that you're creating and/or the nature in which they're being distributed? Censorship, for lack of a better word.
I think the issue in animation is that we don't know, I have to say. I'm sort of in the midst of the SARF process. I'm sort of finished with the SARF process. At first it was based in Beijing, and then we had to go through a body in Nanjing, and then the Nanjing body turned to the Beijing body to figure out what the notes were that were being responded to. So, of course, the first step in the SARF process is your script and submitting your script. I have to say we didn't get any notes, but Harley Xiao, who I work with, CEO of Original Force, knew the people at SARF, and he went in, he said the script's approved. So we didn't ever get any feedback, I have to say. So I don't really know what the SARF process is. I don't know if it's as standardized for animation yet as it is for live action.
yeah, I haven't had any experience with
Fair
it,
enough.
which is kind of awesome at the same time. It's a little nerve-wracking if something comes up at the last minute once you've finished. So,
Any preference in terms of TV versus film right now? Since that's, television has emerged as such a relative competitor? In terms of the work that you do.
well, if television starts wanting to do films, I'm more of a film person than a TV series kind of person. But Netflix and Amazon and even Google. Well, Google are doing shorts, but yeah, I'm quite open to it.
I don't think people necessarily see them as competing.
I'm sorry?
I don't know that they're necessarily competing, these different formats. They tend to complement each other rather than compete, is my perception.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's just more, it's more opportunity for everyone, for the work, but also for the content for people to watch, depending on how they want to do it. So it feels like it's just good for everyone, audiences included.
And there are more formats.
What, I guess personally or career-wise for you, milestones? Were there certain projects that you worked on early on during, that's a terrible question. I'm going to start over. I apologize. I'm gonna jump back into what I've got here. Is there any desire to, and I know you kind of answered this a little bit, so I want to dive back into it, in terms of creating mainstream animated content in China for China and for around the world that isn't just, you know, open season or that kind of you know, I guess what I'm saying is, are we going to see the Chinese version of, you know, something like Ghost in the Shell or something like Spirited Away? Or, yeah, go for it, by all means.
Okay, first of all, open season is awesome.
What was that?
Thank you.
Open season is awesome.
Thank you.
So we'll just start there. And there are some things that are going to be coming out of China that are very exciting. One project in particular, Big Fish in Begonia, managed to find a nice size of the box office in China despite being independently financed film. I think it took, 12 years to produce, blend of 2D and 3D. And it's definitely not your standard family fare. Some people have compared it to some of the anime offerings coming out of Japan. I think it definitely has its own spin.
They're doing number 2. I went there and visited the guys, and I visited the guys on Big Fish in Begonia, and they're doing the second one now, and I don't think it'll take 12 years. I think they're moving.
Moving a little more quickly now. That's fantastic.
If it's okay with you, I'd love to show my trailer so you can see the quality of animation coming out of China.
Sure.
Can we cue that?
For thousands of years, flocks have migrated smoothly across the skies. That is until he came along.
I'm giving you one more chance to grow up. Show you belong to this flock. Lead the junior flyers.
I can't fly with the kids. They're childish.
This is Peg. He ruffles feathers.
This is a family-friendly community.
You are not family-friendly.
Yeah, so what's the problem? Do we have to migrate in a V formation?
But next spring, fate
Are those your kids?
Sure, Larry has other plans.
We got separated from our flock. Can you help us or not?
I would say I'm an or not. Fine, come on, let's go.
Now,
Pick up the pace.
if he doesn't step up,
Can I run on your shoulders?
Not a chance.
and they don't let up,
You have no idea what you're doing, do you?
they're all plucked.
Am I crazy or is your brother indestructible? Whatever I say goes.
I am not a baby. For your information, I am 16 days old.
16 days old, what kind of ridiculous... Ow!
Awkward.
Congratulations, Sandy. That just is incredible. It's a great example of some of the projects that we're going to be seeing coming out.
The quality of animation in Duck Duck Goose, I think it rivals most studios here in Canada and the U.S. And so we're going to be seeing great stuff coming from China, and we're going to see a lot of talent growing up in China and delivering to us some beautiful movies.
Well, and what's interesting about this film, from what we've learned about it so far, is that it has genuinely a broad appeal. It is not localized in any sense, well, except maybe, of course, dialogue.
And it takes place in China. And it will be dubbed in Mandarin with Mandarin actors.
Will it be opening in China before it opens in North America?
It is.
It's already
Going
out.
to be opening, I believe, January 26th in China. It's being released by the Wanda Group, and so for the new year. And it will be released in stereo. And one of the reasons is, first of all, I know the audiences really love stereo, and second, it's much harder to pirate it.
What would you like to plug? Anything you want to plug?
I would like to plug?
Yeah.
Well, I can't because we haven't announced it yet, but
Oh,
I
never
am
mind. I
working on
apologize.
no, it's okay. I'm working on a film for Bianca Chen, and it is also set in China, and I can't wait till we can talk about it. So.
Me neither. But no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut off your applause. I'm sorry. What do you think, and this may be, nothing or nothing relevant, what do you think that China does better? To the extent that, one represents all, obviously, it's much different studios, much different people working very hard. But what do you think that right now, is there anything that they do better in terms of producing animated films, distributing animated films, as opposed to the stereotypical Hollywood production right now?
I'm going to stick my neck out here and say they treat their directors a lot better.
Fair enough.
They give us more autonomy. They give us more say. They let us know what's going on with the budget. We in animation, it's often, don't worry your pretty little head about it. Just go off and be creative. We'll worry about the money. And then, down the road, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have the money for that. It's like, well, if I'd known, I could have, planned for that. So this has been a great opportunity for me in a completely different way to make a film. It's been pretty enlightening. Yeah.
I'd say that animation's so nascent in China right now. And there's such a desire. There's over 1,000 animation companies in China, and there is this major enthusiasm to learn and to grow and to build and turn animation into a real industry. So we have a lot to see coming in the future.
That was my follow-up question. I'm going to do one or two more, and then I'm going to open up to the audience if there's any. I hope there will be interest. What do you think is the future? If you have any specific thoughts on that.
It's bigger and better.
I'm sorry?
It's bigger and better. It's opening up a whole extra amount of work for not only Chinese filmmakers, but also Western filmmakers. It's to have this collaboration, I think, is fantastic. And I hope we can just watch it grow.
I think there's definitely going to be a growing number of co-productions between Chinese entities and companies in other countries throughout the world. As to how that will impact the features that are coming out of China, that kind of still remains to be seen, but I think we're definitely going to be seeing more.
I think today they announced a co-production treaty with Japan.
Okay. That says Q&A, so I'm not sure whose microphone I'm supposed to steal, unless there's, oh, wait, excellent. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. I can understand the emphasis has been on modern animated features. I do 3D, so I'm encouraging more of that. But I was curious about the Chinese appetite for some of the classic old cartoons. I know Mickey Mouse might sell well, but Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, the anarchic Tex Avery stuff, does that translate well for the Chinese market? Can we do something,
Have you
outrageous?
seen Lost in
like
Thailand?
Lost in Thailand? No, I'm afraid I haven't.
You might want to see Lost in Thailand because it reminds me of the Three Stooges. And it was extraordinarily popular in China. There's a gentleman back there.
Thank you, each of you, for being here. This has been really interesting. I'm a little bit of an outsider to animation in terms of writing and directing. I'm more hoping to work in the live action side, but I do have a love of voiceover and training in voiceover. And so I was curious hearing about doing a cast in China that's speaking Mandarin for that release and then having an English cast for the US. I know here in the US, a lot of our huge animated studio films, we get gigantic stars that don't necessarily scream voiceover artist. So we just get big name celebrities. I'm curious on the China side, are you guys going for people who are trained in voiceover, or is it a mixture of they're huge stars in China that maybe have never voiced a character before?
Well, in the United States, we go to big actors because they're big actors because they're well known for a reason. They're really talented, and we need that talent coming from our characters and the voices. So we go to the best talent we can find in the U.S. and hope they'll say yes. Around the world, because we make these movies in sometimes I've done up to 36 languages. We like to get big actors in the territories. My understanding is right now in China is that a lot of the top actors are asking for a lot of money to dub an animated film. So again, we're in the early days to see where it's going to go. There's a lot of dubbing studios in China. There's a lot of character actors in China. The tough part for me coming from the big studio system is that I want a voice that's similar to the voice we cast in the US. And I'd like the voice that we get overseas to match. And Brenda and I did a film together, and we had a character in the film named Jethro, who was a big, hulking character with a big baritone voice. And we sent that to Japan, and when I got back, the best thing I could describe it as a samurai warrior. It wasn't a baritone, great singing voice. They thought that was the match. So you really have to pay attention to the casting, no matter what language you're doing it, and to make sure that you're getting a great performance, and it's matching your U.S. performance.
Stephen Gray, I'm a producer. How long does it take you to put together an animated film from the time you first get the idea until you actually put out the final copy out to the market?
That can take anywhere from 4 to 30 years, depending on the project. I mean, Little Mermaid was in development since Walt Disney was alive, so it took a long time. But once you seriously get going, at least 4 years to get the quality that you're looking for.
You spend the most time on story. So until the story is right, just like what you do in live action. You can have a project in live action that the script comes in fantastic, or you can hire 15, 20 different writers till you get it right. Same thing in animation. We work story as long as it takes.
But also the story aspect of it is pre-editing the movie. In animation, we do the editing at the beginning, not at the end, because you can't afford to shoot coverage in animation. That would just be astronomically expensive. So the reason it takes so long is that you are trying to time the film, you're trying to put scratch dialogue, you're just editing the whole thing. And so that's the blessing and the curse for an animated film. You can try to make it as perfect as you possibly can before you start animating.
Yeah, so we say we make the movie before we make the movie in animation.
我补充2个问题哈。刚才那位先生讲这个，中国的大腕的演员愿不愿意配音？我个人感觉啊，个人观点，中国的这一线演员、一线品牌，像成龙啊、刘德华呀，甚至更知名演员呢，他们也有追求艺术性的一个要求。这个做配音，也是一个非常好的事情。中国把它动画片配音叫声优。 啊，有这个一个行业在逐步的在成长，在兴起。其实当然就是过去2、3年拍的中国的动画片，很多甚至票房不怎么样，他们也请到了大腕的明星去配音，这是一个事实和现象。第二，刚才那位老师啊讲这个，做什么样的内容在中国是允许的还不允许的？其实这个事情应该中国人最清楚。 第二是，中国人在这个政府啊、机构一些智囊啊，他更清楚。就是我们企业是文化部直属的一个国有动漫企业。如果说老师将来有合作的需要，有需要进行选题确认的一个过程啊，我们可以一块儿来协商一下。谢谢。
I think we have time for one more question, if there is one more. Okay. In that case, I'd like to wrap up and say thank you for everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Very enlightening and educational.
Thank you.
One last thing I would like to do, is there anything that you wished I had asked you or wished that you had had a chance to talk about? And now you can pretend that I asked. The answer could be no. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.